All right, good afternoon. Welcome to the Thurston County Board of County Commissioners public hearing on the 2022-2023 budget. These are special public hearings where we break it into different departments and offices. This session is related to general government. It's 4:04 p.m. My name is Ty Menser, Chair of the Board. To my left is the Vice Chair, Commissioner Gary Edwards. To my right is Commissioner Carolina Mejia. To her right is the County Manager, Amira Chavez, Assistant County Manager, Robin Campbell, and Clerk of the Board, Amy Davis. The purpose of this public hearing is to accept and consider public comment on the budgets regarding the following offices and departments: Assessor's Office, Auditor's Office, Commissioner's Office, Treasurer's Office, Human Resources, Central Services, and Information Technology. This is a hybrid public hearing. Those wishing to testify have joined in person, by Zoom, emailed in comment, or mailed in comment. If you wish to testify, please visit the Thurston County homepage online and select Announcements of Public Hearings on the left-hand side. The information to join this public hearing is posted there. If you do not wish to testify but would like to listen and follow along, please watch the live stream through the Thurston County YouTube channel. Robin Campbell, Assistant County Manager, will provide information as to each high-level overview as to each office and department. An office or department representative will be available to answer questions from the public. We will have folks in the boardroom, and then anyone on Zoom that wishes to provide testimony will be called on. You do not need to follow any specific procedure. You will have 4 minutes of uninterrupted time to testify and or ask questions to the elected official or department director. The elected official or department director will answer the questions or may indicate they will follow up. And then you will have 2 minutes to provide any follow-up comments or responses, if any. Time may not be given to another person. When you are called on, please state your name and where you reside in the county for the record. So we already have a public hearing open, continuation from the 1:30. So I will not formally reopen. We're going to just pick up with Robin Campbell. I'm not sure which department you intend to address first.
Right. We are going to pick up with the assessor's office. I'll share my screen. We're going to go from the current slide. And here we go. So the assessor, Stephen Drew, is with us this afternoon. Thanks for being here, Stephen. Just a very high-level summary of what the Office of the Assessor does. They appraise property values and maintain the property information of all property throughout Thurston County. This budget adds funding for the Office of the Assessor. It modifies a position from an appraiser assistant to a senior appraiser. It funds a just appraised technology application and expands SPSS licenses, that's software. It funds the vital statistics data sharing fee increase and provides resources for sending out letters that include the annual notice of value and information about in-person property appraisals. The assessor's office has 33 FTEs. They are funded mostly with general fund, just under $5 million in 22, $5.1 million in 23. Total funds just over $5 million in 2022 and $5.2 million in 2023. And with that, Stephen, I will turn it over to you if you would like to make comments.
Thank you, Robin, and good evening, commissioners and staff. I just want to clarify one thing for the public. We did not increase FTEs. We restored an appraiser assistant FTE designation to the designation of senior appraiser FTE, which is what the FTE was prior to us reducing it and when we hired a trainee. So with that clarification, all of the requests that we had in the budget, culminate to represent our minimalist ask in order to get the work done during COVID times. And we're very appreciative that our requests are incorporated into your recommended budget. The most important item from where I sit is the expanding of the notice that we mail out to taxpayers. We've had a real struggle in the past 14, 18 months with hostility being expressed to public employees as they're in the course of their normal work inspecting properties out in the county. And we believe that this stems from misinformation and frustration, general frustration at government. And so the funding for expanding the notice that goes out to taxpayers, we hope will allow us to dispel misinformation. For instance, when values go up, it doesn't cause taxes to go up. And secondly, to explain why we're visiting each property and why it is that we're required to do that by law. And our hope is that it will allow us to conduct our business with less stress for the taxpayers and far less exposure to harm to our employees. So again, thank you so much for recommending our budget items in the finished budget.
Questions from the board?
No, sir.
No? Okay. Pettit is up.
I only have to make comment, Assessor Drew. I think you actually have one of the more difficult jobs when it comes to people's hostilities elevating, because they do take, they're always happy to sell something for a higher price, but they never want to think that the value went up, and they do associate value increase with property taxes, which you're correct is a misconception of the fact. The people who raise the property taxes are the county commissioners. They're the ones they could be blaming, but that's a whole nother issue. But I think you've done a great job, and I think you've done an excellent job of keeping your budget within line. As a further note, you have some of the nicest personnel in your office, and they have gone out of their way to make sure any of my requests have been filled quickly and properly, fully and properly. So thank you very much for your good work.
I don't have anybody on.
See anyone on Zoom? So,
So I think we're good to go.
all right.
Thank you, Mr. Assessor, Stephen Drew.
Yes,
Great,
thanks,
thank you.
Stephen. And to Linda for being here as well. Thank you. All right. Let's see if I can get lucky and share the screen and go on to the Office of the Auditor. And Auditor Mary Hall is with us this afternoon. So the Office of the Auditor does many things, but at its core, the Auditor's Office administers elections, does recording and issues licenses, and provides the county financial services. In this budget, the board has provided funding for an election technician and additional voting center and redistricting capacity, adds recording position for passport services, adds a licensing position, continues to fund the imaging project for legal recorded documents. The auditor is responsible for maintaining the historic documents of the county. So there is funding to digitize the documents so that we don't lose them. And there's funding in this budget to reorganize financial services. Office of the Auditor has 48 FTEs in this budget. General fund is just over $8 million per year. The Auditor's Office has a few dedicated funds, so total funding is $9.1 million in 2022, just under $9.1 million in 2023, and the Auditor's Office has a bit of a roller coaster when it comes to budgets due to the election cycles. So that influences how this office is funded. With that, Mary, I would invite you to make comments if you would like to the board.
Thank you, Robin, and I'd like to thank the commissioners for approving my budget requests. You know, we're kind of the Swiss Army knife of county government. There are a lot of things that fall under the auditor's office that really don't have anything to do with each other, but I have an amazing staff who continue to do great things. You know, my election staff is second to none. And we have been really busy, not only in elections, but in licensing and recording. Passports, we are booked out as far as we can be. We resumed that in the summer. So we would like to add capacity for passports because that's going to offer better service for residents of Thurston County, because Real ID comes into effect in 2023. So people will no longer be able to get on an airplane with just a normal driver's license. They'll either need an enhanced driver's license or a passport. I'm excited to finally reorganize my financial services team. I've been talking about that for a long time. It was a very horizontal structure, and we've now broken it down into operations and reporting, which also allows upward mobility within the division. And they're just amazing staff, and it's going to serve the county well. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, but I also want to add that I am super excited to move to the Atrium. If you've ever been in Building 1, my lobby there is really cramped, and I can only fit so many customer service people at that counter. So moving to the Atrium, we're going to have a lot less wait time, and we will be able to have 2 passport agents, full licensing team up there, as well as recorded documents. And you know, I also think it's important to point out that my budget ask is only half the amount of the new revenue that I will be bringing into the county, just due to increased business, and also the fact that now the state of Washington will, after a lot of hard work and pressuring the legislators, will now be paying their share of election costs, which amounts to almost $750,000 next year. So I work hard to raise revenue for the county wherever I can, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Commissioners?
No, sir. No questions.
Mr. Pettit?
Yes, Ms. Hall, I have a couple of questions, and you might have some quick answers. This year, the Board of County Commissioners purchased a facility that is, I believe you refer to it as your voting, counting place as such. And I understand that they paid about $5.7 million plus extra cost in order to buy that. And initially, I thought I'd understood there'd be maybe a few $100,000 of remodel work. Do you have an estimate for what the remodel costs for that building would be in order to bring it up to the standard that you would be seeking for the commissioners to do that? Okay. Another, I'm supposed to ask all these questions, sorry.
Okay.
Okay. You mentioned the idea of perhaps moving to the atrium. Do you know what the internal cost is per square foot for the space that you would be occupying, and how many square feet you would be occupying in the atrium? Because based upon the Thurston County Comprehensive Plan, whatever tenant's in there has to pay the full cost of that space that's being leased. And has that amount been added to your budget to compensate for that? Okay. Number 3 is that if there's a provision of the Constitution or state law that states that your office must be maintained at the courthouse, and this current facility we're in is, in fact, the courthouse by definition within county code and recognized as such, Are you going to refuse to move based upon following law, or will you just choose to go ahead and move and be subject to whatever consequence might occur with it? There's my 3 questions.
Okay, thank you. As to the cost of Mottman, I really have no idea. That's more of a commissioner question and facilities question. I simply outlined the need for additional space, especially due to COVID. We can only have half the number of people in there because of the safe distancing requirements. And it was very difficult conducting a presidential year in that environment. So I needed more space. I'm very grateful to the board for purchasing that property. We've been there for over 20 years. I think it's a good investment. We've probably paid for it 3 times over already. And it's adequate for what we do. As far as the cost of the atrium square footage, I also really don't know what that is going to cost. All I know is that the Board of County Commissioners are bound by statute to provide me with adequate facilities to conduct county business. And currently Building 1 does not have adequate space. And as a result, customers have a lot longer wait time, and I can only have 1 passport agent. So I think moving to the atrium is going to be a huge benefit for the citizens of this county and the services they expect from county government. And I can't imagine that the county commissioners are going to stick me with the additional square footage cost of the atrium, but that was not a budget ask in this current budget. As far as a constitutional mandate to be at the courthouse, that is not a constitutional or state law requirement. Perfect example is a couple examples. The director of elections in King County is at a facility in Renton. Pierce County Auditor is also not at the county courthouse. They're in a building that houses emergency management. And there are many more examples across the state. Spokane County is also in an off-site facility. There simply isn't space to have a voting center in these tight quarters. And if you've been in the election office in Building 1, we could only house 2 people with the space requirements for COVID. And that's 2 customers. And we didn't have enough space for all of our full-time employees. So I had to require that people work remotely just to comply with the safe distancing guidelines. So it's way beyond time for us to move into bigger space to adequately serve the voters of Thurston County.
I have, before you, because I have a response to your first 2 questions, and it's on Mottman. The auditor is currently meeting with a design consultant to determine what she needs as far as remodeling in the Mottman complex. And we anticipate within the next couple months having a design and a cost estimate for that. So we don't have the cost estimate yet, but we are working on it. And Mary is involved in that.
In fact, I had a meeting right before this meeting, Robin, and it went really well. I think we're getting close.
All right. So on the second item, the cost of the atrium building has been included in the 22-23 budget allocated to each office and department based on the square footage of the current design. That will probably need to be adjusted as we go, but that has been added to each budget in maintenance level, and the board has approved that cost. So that's already built in, including in the auditor's budget.
You have 2 minutes, Ms. Bredett.
Okay, thank you. Well, I appreciate the extra information from Ms. Campbell. And I'll be really interested in looking at those cost figures that was just referred to, because the very specific and requirement is not to have it as just an internal cost, but the full cost per square foot or the full cost of the lease space that is being leased. So in the case of the Atrium, the example would be if you have 5,000 square feet and it's $28 a square foot, it's going to be, her lease requirement is going to be in addition to whatever utilities or other things, but her cost would probably be somewhere in the neighborhood of, $150,000, $160,000 included in her budget to cover the cost. That's under the capital facilities plan, I believe, item 6 that dictates that particular language. As far as the costs related to taking on projects that the commissioners are doing, yes, the voting center over there, it's not a separate office, so it doesn't require anything. But before making budget decisions, before going out and making commitments, don't you actually need to have the actual figures you're going to be looking at spending? Or do you just go order food and then check your wallet afterwards? I'm encouraging you to take a good, strong look at all costs involved, whether it's the remodel of this facility, the remodel of that facility, or the cost of maintenance on the continuing purpose of the entire facilities. Thank you very much.
Don't see anybody else on Zoom.
Nope.
So,
Thank you, thank you, Auditor Hall.
yeah, thank you so
Thank you.
much, Mary, and to your team, and especially to Olivia today and tomorrow. I think are Olivia's last days with us as well, and so we really appreciate all the work that Olivia has done on the budget
Yeah,
with the budget team.
She's pretty amazing. And Robin, I want to thank you and your team also. This was a really seamless budget process. We did burp a little bit, but ended up rectifying that. But your team did an amazing job as well. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you,
Right.
Olivia. The board was not happy to hear that news, but it just means because we appreciate your work and wish you the best.
Fortunately, we caught it in time.
All right, so the next office is your own office, the Board of County Commissioners. Like every other office and department in the county, this office has a budget. It is headed by 3 elected commissioners and by the county manager, Romero Chavez, who is with us this afternoon. The Board of County Commissioners enact the county laws. You set the county budget. You monitor all funds of the county, and you oversee the appointed departments. So you have many roles. Your legislative role, which is the one you are executing this afternoon, and your executive role where you have department oversight. This budget includes funding for commissioner funds and the commissioner's office. It includes funding for the Thurston County Historical Journal and Historical Preservation Grants. That says grants, but there should be a T in there. I'll get that corrected. You add a climate mitigation coordinator. There is a placeholder for implementing the racial equity plan. There's an increase in funding for Habitat Conservation Plan Land Purchase Authority. And there is an increase in this budget for animal services in the rural area of the county. There are 30.71 FTEs. That includes all funds, not only the general fund portion in your small office. The general fund funding is $10.2 million in 2022 and $9.4 million in 2023. This office manages some of the major funds in the county, which is why you see so many or such a large amount of general, small amount of general fund compared to the total funds in the commissioner's office. And the 8 $108 million includes the recovery fund for response to COVID-19. That's the big amount in that, 108 million. And because we anticipate spending that money, you see 2023 take a precipitous drop to 49 million, still a substantial amount of dedicated funds. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ramiro if you'd like to make comments.
Yeah, thank you, commissioners, and thank you, Robin. One of the initial statements that Robin made this afternoon, the proposed 2022 budget is about $514 million. That seems to be the largest, even for myself, the board is considering approving. And that is not a small feat. I think you have put a lot of time and effort. You have looked at every single request very carefully. And I believe you have struck a good balance and continue to provide services to the citizens to the best of our abilities based on the financial constraints that we have. And you continue to have a good leadership here in the county. Related to the Commissioner's Office, I'm glad that you're considering approving a climate mitigation coordinator, implementing portions of the racial equity plan, as well as the habitat conservation plan. And that is really, as Robin stated, if you go by the numbers, $108 million in the Commissioner's Office doesn't really tell the story. Because we don't use them, but you manage those larger funds, including the detention sales tax, trail court improvements, conservation futures, communications, TCOM 911, which is just a pass-through to TCOM 911, the public educational and governmental funding, the tourism promotion area, historical preservation, the jail capital projects, the real estate excise tax, READ 1 and READ 2. And I think Judge Jasova covers all the responsibility you have just in your office, in addition to provide guidance and leadership on the $514 million proposed budget for the next year. Thank you.
Okay. Edit, you're up first.
I am presuming that the questions are going to be responded to by Mr. Chavez to the questions that I'm going to be asking. As was mentioned, the Board of County Commissioners is the legislative department, and they're the ones that are completely responsible for the final decisions related to this budget. Previously, I have provided that there's a number of spots in the budget and the fund balance report that clearly they don't match up between ending fund balances and starting fund balances. And I request a little information regarding that. Haven't got anything yet. Perhaps you can enlighten us how you increase the end fund balance from December 31 to beginning fund balance of January 1 by over $13 million. Another question which I'm going to have related to this budgeting process is, I took note for the budget year 2021 of taxes being $70,100,500, and I did my math on it based upon your resolutions and based upon all reasonable estimates, and it shows that it's not possible. You'll even be within 600,000, and if you counted the reduction for non-collected taxes, you're going to be nearly $2 million short on that estimate. Are you going to be bringing these issues forward with correct balances prior to final decision time on the budget? Another question has to do with the proposed move for the atrium. One, has a lease actually been signed? Two, has there been a process for getting a bid for tenant improvements within that building? Three, what is the depreciation schedule related to the improvements that are placed in there using REIT funds. I'm going to leave that on the atrium. And then there was another question which I had, since you did say the commissioners are in charge of it. In your CPI, it's estimated there's going to be $84 million worth of revenue from the REIT funds over the next 6 years. REIT funds only collect between the two of them about $10 million a year. How do we get $84 million of revenue when in fact there's only $10 million a year times 6? That would be $60 million between the two, and only one of those can be used for purposes of, for instance, the atrium issue. So those are my first round questions. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Related to the ending fund balance question, and you provided a documentation, you provided a copy on page 331 of the proposed budget. The explanation to that is located on page 330 of the same document. So I will encourage you to look into that, and gives you additional perspective. As it states in there, you know, it really, the ending fund balance changes. And in fact, just last Friday, I received a brand new number from Financial Services as to where the ending fund balance for 2021 will be. So that is something that changes because the whole budget during the year changes accordingly. So I will encourage you to read the explanation of that on page 330 of the budget document. Related to the budget projections that relate to the overall revenue, I believe tomorrow we have a budget public hearing related to the revenue. And we'll dive more in detail related to the revenue and some of the questions that you may have related to the property tax. Related to the atrium, yes, we have signed the lease. The tenant improvements are included in the lease. As we have practiced on previous practices, we are planning to have a open bid for furniture that will be provided on the atrium. I think I addressed your questions, sir.
Okay. Well, I guess I get 2 more minutes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, having reviewed page 330 of the document, there's nothing there that indicates your county manager just provided you an excuse of saying absolutely nothing. He says he has a new end fund figure, but of course he hasn't released that. As far as I can tell, unless the commissioners start getting a grip on this, it appears that you are a destined case for a severe shock when you see where the end fund balances continue to go. I hope that you will take an opportunity to take a look and you'll learn. Unfortunately, the county is the one that's going to pay the price on it. There was a big problem when you had all your COVID money in the general fund. It was a commingling of funds. It made the appearance of a high end fund balance. Your documents indicate they said you had over 35 million. You've never had over $35 million of in-fund balance. That was with COVID money. So that was never your money to put in there. So what you have now is, and I will just share this as I close, you're aiming towards about a $3 million general fund balance by the end of 2023, based upon the numbers and the program that you're currently going on. Thank you.
Nobody's left, so.
Anything else, commissioners? Any questions, follow-up?
It's too complicated for me to get into that at this point in time.
Moving on to the treasurers.
We'll move on. Thank you. All right, so we're moving on to the treasurers. And Treasurer Gadman is with us this afternoon. The Office of the Treasurer manages public funds for the county and small jurisdictions, receives tax payments, and pays debt. And it doesn't say this here, but they also invest the money for the county and the jurisdictions that they serve. This budget includes one-time funding for the Office of the Treasurer to do a temporary double fill of a critical position where the person currently in the position, I believe, is retiring. There are 12.6 FTEs in the Treasurer's office. Only part of the funding for the treasurer is in the general fund. Quite a bit is debt service funds. 1.5 million roughly in each year of general fund money, and 8.5 million in 22, $8 million in 23 in total funds. And Jeff, I'm going to turn it over to you if you would like to make comments.
Thank you. Thank you, commissioners, for your time tonight. And I do want to say, you know, the basic function of my office, protect public money. And we do that very, very well. I've got an incredible staff that is here to serve you, to serve the tax districts, and serve the citizens of Thurston County. And I can't be more proud of them. We do have a one-time ask to be able to do an early hire of a key position that we expect will retire next year. And so I thank you for your consideration of that. I am looking forward to moving to the Atrium building so that we can model our service to the citizens and tax districts in the 21st century versus the building that we're in now. The flow of customers between the assessor, auditor, and treasurer is going to be much, much easier, and it's going to take them much less time to conduct business. And I really do want to thank Robin and her staff for the ease that they've made this budget process. It has just been very, very easy in very, very difficult times, and I just can't praise her and her staff enough. And I'd be willing to answer any questions.
Thank you, Jeff.
Board?
You know, I might have a question. Jeff, for the rest of the citizens in the county, how much money do you invest of public money to make sure it's, you know, has adequate return?
So when I first got into the office in 2017, the balance in the investment fund, the average balance bounced between 750 and $800 million. And for the last year and a half, it's been bouncing between 1 and 1.1 billion. Now that is not just county money; that is all the taxing district money too that we bank for. But there's a significant portion of that is county money,
Okay.
including, I want to add, the ARPA money that we got from the federal government is also in that fund until you direct the spending of that money.
Yeah, it's earning interest.
And I would just point out that because Jeff isn't ringing his own bell there, I guess, I want to thank you for taking the effort to get those properties that were a liability back on the tax rolls so they're an asset to the citizens in Thurston County. I know you've put a lot of time into that.
Thank you for noticing that, because that is really important, because those properties, you know, they don't generate any revenue for the county as long as they are in tax title, and getting them back onto the tax rolls is incredibly important to me.
Thank you. That's it for me, sir.
Any public testimony regarding the treasurer? Okay, there is none. You're good to go, Jeff. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff.
Moving on to our next department. We have Human Resources, and Director Maria Aponte is with us this afternoon. Human Resources Department is an internal service provider. They provide personnel and risk management services to county offices, and so much more. This budget adds an executive assistant position, establishes a retirement leave buyout fund. It's a pilot that we're going to try that will be a benefit to all offices and departments. And the budget increases resources to build and expand on online training for the entire county. There are 20 FTEs in human resources. The general fund portion is 2.5 million per year, and total funds 6.7 million in 2022, 6.9 million in 2023. Maria, I'm going to turn it over to you if you would like to make comments.
Thank you, Robin. Just briefly, I want to thank the commissioners for considering HR's policy level request, in particular, reinstating the FTE that I lost last year. That is greatly appreciated. I also want to thank the budget team for all the work and effort that goes into it. There's so much behind the scenes. It's incredible to watch it evolve. And I also want to thank members of my team that this was a banner year for FTE requests. And so creating new classifications, benchmarking them, setting them up in Questica, and going into the future, the recruitment. It's a lot of added work, but it's also exciting to see our offices and departments get much needed staffing. So thank you. Any questions?
None from the board? Nope, none from the public.
Oh, all right. Thank you so much, Maria.
I can actually read the Zoom names, and I know them all. Okay.
Moving right along. Next up, central services. And one of my assignments here at the county is to act as the director of central services. So I'm here this afternoon to answer any questions you may have. Central Services provides facility, equipment, fleet, archive, and mail services to county offices. This budget adds a vehicle for mail operations as the number of county locations expands. We added a position and a vehicle to facilities to address the addition of the Mottman complex and the expansion of square footage that needs to be maintained in the county. And the budget replaces cameras in the corrections facility that is part of the capital project work that Central Services does. There are 56.3 FTEs in Central Services. There is no general fund direct appropriation. The Central Services operates as a revolving fund, if you will, where all services are billed out to offices and departments. That becomes the revenue for the department. The total budget for Central Services, this is operating, not capital, is $24.4 million in 2022, $23.7 million in 2023. And with my hat on as the Director of Central Services, I would like to thank the board for funding these high priority items for Central Services and for recognizing the importance of the internal services to all of the county, because Central Services, human resources and information technology and financial services in the auditor's office, the county could not operate and provide any services without the work that these departments do. So appropriately funding these departments enables all of the services to be delivered across the county. And I appreciate that the board recognizes the importance of the work that these departments do. And with that, I would be happy to answer any questions.
From here?
I have no questions tonight.
Robin, have you ever done like a, in terms of a county of our size, having 56 employees in this type of a role, have you ever looked at other counties to see if we're, just kind of a question out of the blue, I mean, Kitsap, or we're always looking at Kitsap and Whatcom, and are we adequately staffed if you looked at other counties for this?
I have not looked at comparable counties for the type of work that we do in central services. That's something that is on my list of things to do.
I'm sure there's
Have a
different
little
structures,
time.
but yeah, okay, just
Yep,
curious about that.
Well, I'd like to do that because we do know that in facilities in particular, we've looked at national standards and we are staffed far below the number of facility technicians that are standard for the number of square feet in the county. So in that area, we're not adequately staffed, but we do the best that we can with what we have.
Okay, great. That's kind of information I was curious about. Okay, anything, Mr. Pettit, you're here. Central Services.
Yes, well, Ms. Campbell says she's the person, the go-to person to ask the question, so I'll start asking a few questions. Historically, I've always been very concerned about the maintenance of the courthouse campus up here. Do you know how much was expended this year and what is scheduled to be spent on this campus the next 2 years in the regular budget? Okay, my next question is that the projection of a remodel has been stated and put in place with the county commissioners. Has there actually been an estimate of actual cost to do a remodel yet for this facility? And if so, how much is the cost for remodel? And then also, how much do you have available in funds to actually pay for whatever remodel that would exist? Number 3, during the time that some of the space may be emptied, who is going to be paying the cost for the square footage, the internal cost per square footage of it? Does that become the county commissioner's responsibility for paying for the square footage for the maintenance, because maintenance doesn't go away? Number 4, are you still using janitorial services, higher contractual janitorial services for this facility? Number 5, you stated that no general funds actually go into this particular department. But you also stated that each department is paid accordingly. So would it be correct to say that, yes, general funds absolutely go to support this department, but it is through the individual budgets that you put the general funds into their departments, and then you take the general funds back out? So is it really funded typically by general funds? Next question. I was noted with the potential atrium that's part of this program that there is a figure of a highly reduced amount from the approximate 2.5 million per year cost and of the lease. And a certain amount was stating that a certain amount was going to be used out of general funds. Is that amount out of the general funds being done without being sent through any particular department, or was that integrated into those departments that are going to be using space? The other questions, which I'm going to have, obviously, you would be of the know, but I appreciated the county manager's comment that you've signed a lease that included the tenant improvements. And since it included the tenant improvements, then there's no cost, I assume, that's going to be spent for tenant improvements out of the REIT funds, because I noticed that in fact, you don't do that in a commercial lease. Either the landlord owns it or the tenant owns it. So I'm assuming if what he said is true, there's no expenditure of REIT funds for tenant improvements other than furniture. And are you aware of any figures for estimates for the tenant improvements? Okay.
Okay, let's see how we go. Yes, my microphone's on. So the maintenance of the courthouse campus, I don't know off the top of my head exactly how much, but I will look that up and get back to you. Projection of remodel for this facility. Yes, there was a projection done. We had something called the Meng study from a few years ago. Two of our staff, the facilities manager, one of our capital project managers, worked to update that, and I presented the updated numbers, just what it would cost to be able to continue to operate I'm assuming you're talking about buildings 1 through 6. And the estimated cost 2 years ago was about $50 million, roughly. That is about how much we can afford to bond in REIT. Actually, at this point, we could afford closer to $55 million in REIT. So you will see that amount in the capital facilities plan to be used for these buildings. We are also pursuing energy efficiency grants to use in these buildings and working together with the Department of Enterprise Services on an energy program that they do that will enable us to revise lighting, windows, the heating system. I believe it will cover the roof, and we will have a proposal very soon on that to present to the board that will increase the amount of money that's available to upgrade these buildings. While the space is empty, the county's has traditionally used general fund to pay for maintenance cost in empty space. So if you think about the old jail as an example, their share of square footage of the unused space in the old jail is billed to non-departmental. We haven't gone through all the calculations yet, but it is most likely that we'll do that when the space in these buildings are being worked on, but that is yet to be developed. What we have built in the cost of the Atrium lease in every office and department budget. It's part of the calculations of the 2022 budget. And what we haven't done yet that'll be part of the midterm, since it was too late in the process to do this by the time the board approved the Atrium, we will calculate how much is in each of the office and departments' budgets for what they would have paid when they were in this building. We'll take that back out of their budgets, and that will be funding available that we can use to pay the costs of maintaining the buildings while they're empty. Yes, we are still using contracted janitors. In fact, we are preparing to go out to bid to renew the contract. I think that's
We
on
received the bids.
Yeah, the bids are in.
We're bringing a recommendation to the board to consider approval next week.
Yep, so we're about to have a new contract, and it is a company who it was vetted by the state of Washington. General funds. So what I said was that the appropriation, there is not a direct appropriation of general funds to central services, but you are absolutely correct. Costs are allocated and funds are built into every office and department to be able to pay the cost. That is a best practice in accounting. It's called activity-based costing, or ABC accounting. And that way you can get to what the actual cost of doing business for any particular service that the county provides. Yes, we do that. And part of central services is paid through general fund, probably about 55%, roughly 55 to 60%. The Atrium, the total cost of the Atrium lease is allocated across all funds in all of the offices and departments The portion you see on the forecast is the refined amount that was included in the lease, and the forecast is specifically for the general fund, but the entire amount of the lease is built into the budget across all the funds that we'll pay in. You asked about tenant improvements in the contract. I'm going to have to double check the contract, but because by the time I signed it, we may have not included tenant improvements because we know that those need to go out to bid. We are estimating the allowance, if you will, and this was in the AIS, of 10 million, up to $10 million in tenant improvement. They will be paid from REIT. And I think that that's your whole list. I don't think I missed any.
You have 2 minutes, sir. Pretty good. That was a pretty good rundown of stuff.
Pretty good response.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your answers. I actually find it interesting because I happen to review the City of Olympia. City of Olympia has already had a permit issued, or I shouldn't say issued, but applied for by the building contractor for tenant improvements at a total amount of $2.25 million, which is a whole long way from $7 million that the initial discussion was. But from what I understand, there was no bidding process was ever going to be occurring regarding the tenant improvements, just merely that it's included in the lease. And so I think that as commissioners, you have an obligation to make sure that it goes through the formal bidding process for any expenditure of funds. Now, this comes up with another portion which you're going to need to address, which is if you use REIT funds, it becomes whatever that is, that's property that belongs to the county. It can't be used for rent. It has to be property owned. Now, you can have a tenant improvement, you own it, but then it gets depreciated over a schedule of years, such as over here at the courts, over here on Chandler Court. And of course, those tenant improvements got depreciated over either 10 or 20 years, which is longer than the lease. Any providing of REIT funds for payments of tenant improvements go beyond the lease time frame is, as I've instructed or told you before, becomes a gifting of public funds. And so that is a very significant issue. I mean, if it doesn't cost anything to move over into the atrium for cost, I don't have a problem. They bought it for $4 million. And now they can rent it for $2.5 per year.
5 seconds.
I think my time's up, at least I think people are tired of having me talk about this, so I'll be back with you a little later on it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't think there's anyone on Zoom.
Double check any.
I don't see the Zoom. But let me check. No, I don't recognize anybody from the outside.
All right. So moving on to, I think, the last of the departments this afternoon, that's information technology. Dennis Osorio, the director, is with us today. Our information technology department ensures that the county information technology systems and infrastructure are up to date and able to support the goals of the county and support the services that we provide. This budget adds a new project manager to support IT operations, and this person will help us to implement replacement of large IT systems. The FTEs in information technology, 49.85 FTEs. Again, no direct appropriation of general funds, but total funds, which are allocated, are $23.4 million in 2022 and just under $16 million in 2023. In 2022, I believe, and Dennis is going to correct me if I'm wrong, pays for some of those major IT system replacements that we have planned for. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dennis.
Thank you, Robin. Yes, you are correct. With those projects, those are implementation costs of some of these large projects that we have going, currently live right now, and hopefully will be finished by the end of next year. I want to thank the commissioners for supporting our requests. Specifically, the new project manager is going to allow us some bandwidth to continue to get some of these large projects underway in a formal manner. In addition, I'd like to thank Romero and Robin, as well as all county leadership, that they've continued to support IT. This pandemic has proven to show the importance of technology. So everyone's continued to stay flexible with us as we continue to try to provide our best service during all of this, as well as replace numerous large systems and mature the organization as a whole. And then finally, I'd just like to thank my team in the IT department, coming up with very creative solutions and providing the best services and support that they can to the staff here and to the citizens of Thurston County. With that, I'll take any questions.
Nothing from the board. Doesn't sound like. Mr. Pettit's here, though. I'm sure he'll have a question or two.
I do have a question. You know, IT, the obvious part about IT is that things wear out, they get old. Try to get a computer to last more than 3 years, and you're pushing the envelope. So I am assuming that even though the figure for 2022 at $23,370,000 is has some replacement modes, which will have a longer term life, would it be correct to say that we can pretty much anticipate a budget of similar nature, 16 million plus in ongoing years beyond 2023? So there's one question. Next question. Based upon, and I don't know, I'm just was going to do my quick math check. I'm thinking you have 1,200 employees, and if I go $16 million and I divide that by 1,200 employees, I'm spending about $13,000 per employee for the IT element. Is that something that I probably need to figure that's the cost of every employee is going to be another $13,000 worth of cost and involved? Is this something we should expect for the long-term ongoing part of how much IT costs in the process? I mean, the budget itself seems like a lot of money, okay? It just does. We know it's a lot of replacement, a lot of people, but is there a way that we can do this more effectively, or can we even potentially look at contract services on the outside that may be able to supply some of these services and reduce our overall cost for IT services? So I do appreciate good IT work. I know you're there, you're keeping everything running. I appreciate a plumber keeping the toilets running too, but essentially what I'm saying is there some other ways that we can project saving more money than having to spend 13 to, well, this year, I don't even want to talk about that number, what it would be, to $20,000 a year per employee for IT work.
All right, thank you. So the 16 million in 2023, that is still also continuing to capture implementation costs of large projects. So we will have large project replacements being implemented probably through 2025. So if you're asking for a specific baseline of just operating costs, that I don't believe that captures it. If that was the correction or the question that you had, and this is part of this is due to keeping these costs down over so many years, and so many systems are now end of life, and we are having to replace them all at the same time. So that goes into the 13,000 per employee. I think we would have a better baseline once all of these systems are replaced and on a regular life cycle. And then, and we wouldn't be replacing all of these every 5 years either. These large applications are not like computers. An example would be our ERP system. Those last, 15 plus years, 15 to 20 years. So they are not on regular life cycles such as more operational technology.
2 minutes, sir.
Well, thank you for your directness, and candor and all of that. I didn't really hear any response if you had anything about potential of outside services. Most large corporations actually don't maintain just their own IT department. They actually contract with IBM or some of the other different sources to maintain the systems. And I would like to see that we don't have a department that's costing more than the prosecutor's office or more than public defense or more than the commissioner's office and more than the assessors. It is one of the largest cost departments in the entire county. And while I realize you don't receive direct funding necessarily from the capital, the main general fund, you do receive funding from indirect through all the departments, and it still means so many dollars out. So thank you very much.
Can I comment one more time? Because I'm sorry, I didn't realize that was an actual, that was one of his questions. It doesn't need a rebuttal. I would just say that these software as a service, large applications that we are putting in place, that's why we're going with software as a service first. They're cloud-based, and we actually do offset some of the administration of these systems. So when you're talking about such as ERP as an example, we're moving to Oracle Cloud. We will start administering only at the application layer and above. And without getting too technical, the cloud within Oracle will be outsourced to Oracle, and we'll be paying with that via licensing. And we'll be looking at that model for most of our large system applications going forward.
Thank you, Dennis.
Great. No one on Zoom.
No one on Zoom, so I think that will take us to
The end.
the end.
Time for a recess until 6 p.m.
Yep.
In which
right.
point we will pick up with the capital improvement plan. And then when we're done with that, we will probably immediately go into an open session for those who may not have been able to attend this afternoon. As I understood from the paperwork, I think this is relevant to Commissioner Mejia's concern as well. What I understood from the paperwork is that staff will be collecting all questions for response at a later. So
Correct.
come with your questions and or comments, just like this afternoon, if you want to come at 6:15 to speak to any of the budgets.
Yes.
And we'll hopefully be able to follow up in that way.
Yes, that's correct. So just to wrap, I'd like to thank all of the members of the general government sector of county government for being here, for everything that their offices and departments do, and for the great work that they all contributed to the budget, especially my budget team who are part of this part of government. They've done an amazing job, and we wouldn't have a budget if it were not for the work that they had done. So,
If I may, is the needs the last day today or tomorrow?
tomorrow,
Tomorrow, so we'll have
more day.
a nice send away and thank you for everything, what she has done for the budget office in the last couple of years. Thank you, Denise.
Yes.
You are.
All right.
All right.
Very good. With that, we'll be in recess until 6 p.m.